Dobrodošli na drugi dan treće Beogradske konferencije o vodoniku. Juče smo u panel diskusijama otvorili dosta interesantnih pitanja od regionalne saradnje, balansiranja, investicija, regulative, perspektive upotrebe vodonika. Današnji dan će biti mnogo praktičniji, dakle govorit ćemo o vrlo konkretnim, bit će konkretan fokus na projekte proizvodnje zelenog vodonika, praktična iskustva kompanije i institucija koje već razvijaju i primenjuju vodonične tehnologije. Pre nego što krenemo sa prvim panelom današnjeg dana, čućemo dva uvodna predavanja, odnosno dve kratke uvodne prezentacije. Prva prezentacija nosi naziv Niska emisija ugljenika ima visoku cenu, da li je to jedina istina? And I will switch to English now because our two first presenters will be presenting in English. So the first presentation name is Low Carbon Intensity Comes with a Premium Price. Is this the only true? It will be presented by Stephen B. Harrison, founder and managing director of SBH4 Consulting. Mr. Harrison, please, the stage is yours.
Thank you very much. Thank you indeed, Zoran. So welcome to everybody. I was here yesterday in the afternoon. I had a bit of a panic because I heard the presentations and the discussion was all in Serbian. And I thought there's no way I'm going to be able to learn Serbian overnight. But I was very relieved when I heard that the presentations can also be in English and there's also translation. So I hope that I'm going to be able to speak clearly enough that everybody can understand, either directly in English or through the translators. You're doing a great job. So, let's try to get the presentation up on the screen, shall we? Do I just press a button here, or how does this happen? Fantastic. Okay, well, that's me. You're welcome to connect with me through LinkedIn or have a look at my website to see a little bit more about what I do. We're going to talk about hydrogen, and specifically green hydrogen, and how to generate decent business cases. A lot of people are concerned that green hydrogen is simply too expensive. This concern is often valid, but not always. And I'm going to show you three ways of making a decent business case around green hydrogen. The first is to have a look at the most traditional paradigm for low-cost green hydrogen production, which is a high-utilisation electrolyser scheme. A good example of this is taking place right now in India, southeastern India, 1.2 gigawatts, not megawatts, 1.2 gigawatts of electrolyser capacity to produce ammonia. Now, the ammonia synthesis facility wants to operate continuously, and also to ensure that the capital that has been invested, the whole system wants to operate continuously. So how can that continuous operation of an electrolyser be achieved? Through the use of intermittent and variable wind and solar electricity generation. Good question. Whoops-a-daisy. Well, the answer lies in energy storage. If I'm relying on intermittent electricity from wind and solar, I can either store electricity up front and operate my electrolyser at high utilisation, or I need to store the hydrogen afterwards and then have a continuous feed of hydrogen to the ammonia plant. So in this particular project, in addition to building new wind and solar capacity, they will build a pumped hydro scheme on this particular gorge that you can see to make sure that there is sufficient energy storage to supply firm electrical power to the electrolyser, which means a high capital utilisation on the electrolyser and the downstream ammonia facility. Now, clearly, we can't do that everywhere. Not everywhere has the appropriate water resources or geography to do pumped hydro storage. And this is one of the reasons why all hydrogen strategies and schemes need to be done in a way which is totally appropriate to the local circumstances. You can't cut and paste a hydrogen deployment strategy from Germany and put it in Serbia. You really need to think about what's right for Serbia. And for those of you in Albania or other places, the answer would be the same. But if we consider Albania, anybody here from Albania today? Anybody know what the percentage of hydropower generation in Albania is? 95, says somebody. Incredibly high. So if we go to a place like Albania, we ask ourselves, what has this country got lots of? What's its strength? And we say hydropower generation, which is very, 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 very firm renewable power. It allows you to do an electrolyser scheme with high utilisation and low cost. Again, think about what the resources you have around you and utilise those. There's some project statistics there. You can read those later. The second is what I refer to as intentionally intermittent electrolyser operation. So the opposite of what we've just discussed. So imagine that you have a grid here in Serbia or any other country in the future where, for example, there's nuclear baseload generation capacity, and that doesn't want to be turned up or turned down. It just likes to run 100 megawatts or whatever it is it likes to run. Don't touch it. And on top of that, you've got variable wind and solar. And sometimes the sun is shining and the wind is blowing together, and there's much too much electricity coming onto the grid. And at those points in time, the grid says, hey, anybody want free electricity? In fact, I'll pay you to take this electricity away because my grid can't cope. The frequency is rising beyond 50 hertz and I need more demand. Otherwise, they have to go to the nuclear power plant and tell them to turn down, and nobody's happy about that. So we end up in a situation where the cost of that electricity, which is a huge cost of any green hydrogen project, the cost of that electricity is going to be zero or negative. And bear in mind that when we build these projects, the capital on day one is a big expense, but the operating cost, the electricity I purchase, is much more significant over a 20-year period. So as we get into these periods of high supply, low demand, typically in the middle of the day when the solar is active, and we're outside of the demand peak in the morning and the evening, then we tend to get negatively priced and zero price power. Now, these things clearly depend on the national power pricing structure, the market structure. Some markets are structured in a very, very different way. Pakistan, for example, fixed price electricity any time of the day. This kind of scheme would not work. Don't try this in Pakistan. But you come to Germany or South Australia, and this kind of scheme works really, really well. Somebody else is going to pay you to operate your electrolyser. You're not going to have to pay them for power. Suddenly, the cost of your hydrogen drops. Now, is this relevant for Serbia today? I would say no. Is it going to become relevant for Serbia and countries in the West Balkans region, Southeastern Europe in the future? Yes. Are we ready in Serbia? Do we have the experience to suddenly deploy 200 megawatts of electrolysers? No. But how are we going to build that experience in the country? By starting with walking, by starting with smaller projects to learn exactly how this concept is going to work in the future, because you will need it. And when you need it, you'll need people and teams with the expertise and the experience to do this at scale and make it work well and not make mistakes. This is already happening in Germany, by the way, through a company called StableGrid, who are using very, very flexible PM electrolyzers from ITM. And notice the name of this company, it's StableGrid. They've not called themselves Green Hydrogen Company, because their value proposition is more about grid stability than making green hydrogen. And that's really, I think, one of the strengths that we should be looking at for green hydrogen, not just to say, I want to make green hydrogen for green hydrogen, but how can green hydrogen integrate into an energy system? But if we're going to produce on an intermittent basis and have continuous demand, a bit like we said earlier on, we need massive storage. These industries, they don't want intermittent hydrogen supply, they want continuous firm hydrogen supply. So it puts a lot of pressure on very, very low-cost hydrogen storage at high capacity, which can be achieved in, for example, underground lined rock caverns. The third case I'm going to give you is to make the cost of the hydrogen irrelevant. So yes, it might be more expensive to purchase green hydrogen than fossil grey hydrogen. Yes. But how can we minimize the impact of that cost penalty? By creating derivatives of that hydrogen that add value. So we start with a green hydrogen molecule, and for example, we then turn that into ammonia. We've added value once. Or we turn it into ammonium nitrate. We've gone further up the value chain, higher price. The hydrogen content in that ammonium nitrate now is actually quite low. And then I go to diammonium phosphate from the ammonium nitrate. Now the amount of hydrogen in the diammonium phosphate is almost nothing. So even if the grey hydrogen was cheaper than the green hydrogen, the cost of the hydrogen molecule in the end product is very, very little. So even if I paid a premium for it, by the time I've created an end product at high value, it can still be internationally competitive. And again, this is the kind of project that's really happening. This is a dam in Paraguay, and you can research the Atome project, where they're going to be making calcium ammonium nitrate in Paraguay and exporting it to Europe. Exporting it at a competitive price to a fossil fuel alternative. And again, this table, if you want to look at it later on, I'm sure these presentations will be made available to you. This table is showing you how the impact of a higher hydrogen price at the beginning gets lost, gets diluted as we go to higher added value derivatives. Now, why is that last project of relevance to Serbia? I haven't just come here today to tell you about what's going on in other parts of the world. That's theoretically and academically interesting. But I want to come here today and plant some seeds so that they can grow in your mind, so that they can grow in your plans to become relevant and live in the future. Question, please. Where does Serbia currently source those higher added value nitrogen fertilizers? So the ammonium nitrate, calcium ammonium nitrate, diammonium phosphate, and ammonia itself. Where does Serbia currently buy those from today, please? Anybody know? Anybody know? From where? Some is imported from Europe, the European Union, that's absolutely right. Anybody know how much money Serbia spends importing these products every year? So 337 million euro equivalent was spent in 2024. And more than half of that money was spent with Russia. And the other half was spent with various other European Union and European trading partners. Now, when Serbia has an ambition to join the European Union, then we must ask ourselves, how long can that trade with Russia continue? At present, Serbia is a European Union candidate state, but as soon as it has full membership, it will be subject to the sanctions that every other EU member state is. Are you going to import those ammonia derivatives from other European countries, or not import them and not be able to grow food, or are you going to make them locally? So again, 2030, whatever that date of joining the European Union is, when you can no longer buy from Russia, think ahead. Think ahead in your national strategy and your national planning to make sure that you're ready for what's coming next. And maybe using green hydrogen produced here in Serbia or the West Balkan region to produce that ammonia and those ammonia derivatives. It will save the cost of those imports, so it'll save your currency, and it'll reduce your reliance on Russia and enable you to comply with European sanctions. So there you go. Hopefully these three cases have been interesting for you, and hopefully I've planted them as being relevant for the West Balkan region. Thank you.